So happy to be in front of you with my co-leaders here. I wish the co-leaders were a little bit another dimension, three-dimensional, but welcome to our session. And you are in the session Federal Partner Engagement on Public Data and Product Changes. My name is Leslie Shee. I'm at the U.S. Geological Survey in the Science Data Management Branch. And I would like to first welcome in-person and online participants, and I'm going to pass it off to my co-session hosts online to say hello. And I'll start with Jessica Morgan.
Hi there. So I'm Jessica Morgan. I am the NOAA Assistant Chief Data Officer for Satellites and Data. And I am also my agency's point of contact with ESIP. And so a little bit of context for how we all came together to begin with. So my colleagues here, Leslie and NASA Jay, we together are part of how the federal agencies engage with ESIP in our cooperative agreement. And it's been a wonderful opportunity for us to actually engage with each other in our three different sibling cousin agencies. And so I am thrilled to be joined with my colleagues from NASA and USGS.
Thanks, Noah, Jessica. Now from the NASA side, we have Jessica Burnett and Katie Baines. NASA, Jessica, would you like to go next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Burnett, and I'm a program executive actually working for Katie Baines at NASA in DC. Like Jessica said, I'm also the ESIP point of contact for NASA and have been joining NASA or ESIP sessions and clusters since before I joined NASA, where I used to work with Leslie Shee over at USGS. And I'm really excited that we are here today. And we are so looking forward to your advice and feedback on data product notifications. And I'll pass it over to our Earth Data Officer, Katie Baines.
Hey y'all, apologies for not being able to be there in person. That was a surprise to us, just as Jessica said, we're going through a lot of changes within our organizations and reorganizing. So I think this session comes at a perfect time to identify what our current best practices are as far as user notification and impact assessment and announcement. But also looking forward how that may affect higher level products is something I kind of want to dig into as we go forward. So I'm really eager to identify what we're doing now, identify gaps and things that we may not have even thought of yet. So thanks for having us.
Thank you. And now we will all hold our breaths as I click share slides. We are sharing sound and optimizing for video sharing and pressing share again. So, online friends, do you see a full screen? Title?
Yes.
Yay. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Jessica Morgan, who did get us all together in this session to kick us off, and I will press forward when you ask to go next, Jessica, and we'll keep an eye on the time where our intro and our 5 little presentations should take about 20 minutes. Go ahead, Noah, Jessica.
Thank you. So here we are, federal partner engagement on public data and product changes. And so right off the bat, what we're talking about is the ESIP data community, right? So ESIP brings together partners from all different sectors. And we have 3 federal agencies who want to engage with you, the ESIP community, on a thing that we're doing, a thing that we've always been doing, but we want to take advantage of this year's meeting to engage and see, if we can learn something and improve how each of our 3 agencies are doing things. So yeah, let's dive in. We are, next slide. Yes, okay. So we're gonna talk about, so I'm a policy wonk. Okay, so my colleagues might be actual data people. No, I'm a data person, but I'm mostly a policy and procedures person. And so this topic is very near to and dear to my heart. It's federal policies and procedures for something very specific to the earth science data community, right? So there are policies and procedures on public notice, so informing the public, whoever that is, about changes to agency data products, okay? And these changes happen all the time. Specifically, though, we want to talk about discontinuations. So when we cease to update, or we in fact like box up and put away a federal agency data product. So our goals for this session are to bring awareness to the folks in the session, to really engage. And we have a list of 4 questions that we want to hear from you about. And we're going to think about, do we need to improve? How can we improve? Next slide, please. Okay, so the 4 questions, just as a preview. And remember, we're talking about when a federal agency discontinues something, a data product, a data set, a data stream, a data portal, a data something, right? So when we do that, how much advance notice is adequate for the data community, the users? What information do users need to know when a discontinuation is happening? Where should we put that notice? Like, where are you going to go to learn about things? And is email the best way to provide an opportunity for input? So those are the 4 questions. We're going to walk through some examples and then come back to these questions. And we really want to hear from you. You know, what are we doing? Are we doing things that are good? Is there room for improvement? Next slide. Oh, yes. Okay. So Leslie.
Yes, we would really appreciate if both those of you online and in person could please contribute in the Slido poll here. If you go to slido.com, the code is changes, or you can use the QR code here. And there's going to be 2 questions. One is to get a gauge of if we have data providers, data users, both that have come to the conversation. And then just a quick, why are you here? What can we talk about to bring you value if you showed up here? And we'll leave that, let me just preview what is next on here. Okay. So co-conveners, we have a little bit of the motivation. Would you like to talk about the motivation while people finish this poll, and then we'll look at the poll?
Yeah, let's do that. Okay, so again, policy wonk, I love me a law. So there's a law called the Paperwork Reduction Act, which most people think about because they see something about that in fine print at the bottom of a government form. But it does so many things, this law. And one of the many, many things that Paperwork Reduction Act does is require all federal agencies to provide notice when initiating, modifying, or terminating significant information products. And there's a lot packed into all those words. So what we're talking about is seeing that it applies to the discontinuance of data sets, tools, websites, or any other product or information dissemination mechanism, right? And so you can think of the millions of websites that you go to get information. That is all covered, if it's a federal agency one, it's all covered under Paperwork Reduction Act. The thing about a law, though, is laws are laws. The specifics are, So the law does not provide details on the types of products that are deemed significant, how much notice is adequate, where notice should be given, or how to respond to comments. Okay, so we have a law, yay! And it applies to all of our agencies, and it applies to earth science data, but the law doesn't specify how we do this, right? It gives a general thing, provide adequate notice. So that's what we want to talk about. Each of our agencies have longstanding policies and procedures in place to meet this law. By longstanding, it might be like decades. And maybe we haven't changed what we've been doing. for decades. So let's talk about that. First, let's see who's here.
Okay, thank you for those who have responded, and it looks like some of you are still responding. Don't worry, I will talk slow so you can finish. But it looks like we have about equal numbers, 44% of respondents, plus or minus, are data providers from federal agencies or sources, or data users. We also wanted to have a category here for you might be a data provider, not a federal agency that is under this law, but you want to discuss the best practices for this. Okay, and if we go forward to some of the reasons why we're attending this session. So yeah, you want to know if you use a lot of data. Let me go down to the bottom, see if that works. Support federal colleagues and data users. Learn the lessons and best practices in data management from the broad community, concern about recent changes in data products, and wondering if there's a better way for communication. Okay, you saw the questions that were up there and you're curious about them. Information sharing between the different federal agencies, a huge thing that ESIP helps to facilitate. Thank you, ESIP. Hearing from feds and working together. The current state of data products in the federal agencies. You may be other, not a provider nor a user, but interested in the discussion because it's affecting you. Okay, so you can see a bunch of different things. And I believe that if you did click send, you should be able to read through these answers. Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah.
So we may come back to this because there's a lot and I can't read all of them, but thank you for your thoughtful responses, and everyone and co-session hosts, as we go through the discussion, let's try to, if you see something here you want to bring up, it's not a problem to repeat why you are here. You can say, I put in the slide, oh, this is why I'm here, and then bring up your discussion point. Okay. I will go back to the slides if that works for everyone. I still did not successfully get the small speaker rectangle, so now we're just seeing the slides. So we're going to, unless someone knows how to rectify that on Zoom right away, I think we should forge ahead.
Yeah, that's cool.
Okay, here we go, slideshow, and about 5 minutes for each agency example. So here we go, Noah.
Okay, thank you. So with that context of, all of our agencies, we have all of these data products and data streams, data sets, data everything across all of our mission portfolios, right? So here's just some little graphics of all the things that NOAA does. But each of our agencies, we've got a lot going on. So in my agency, NOAA, we have what's called an administrative order, and it lays out, there's a policy on partnerships for the provision of environmental information. It's not just data, right? It's also information. So our policy requires us to provide an opportunity for input by interested persons and entities into the decisions regarding the development, dissemination, and discontinuance. So our policy is not just about the discontinuation, it's also about changes, and it's about new stuff, right? Because over the decades, all of those things will happen. Caveat, unless public safety or national security concerns dictate otherwise. So that's just our lawyers putting that in. And so this looks very similar, this policy, to the Paperwork Reduction Act kind of bullets. It's like, do some stuff, not a lot of detail. Okay, so what I wanted to do for NOAA is show you two examples from two different parts of NOAA that have been doing this for decades. Okay, so our first example is from the Weather Service. Next slide. Okay, so the Weather Service has a webpage. There's the link there. I might be able to figure out how to put the links in the chat. But it's a webpage that has just a running list of all the change notices for everything, right? So soliciting comments on an upgrade to something, on a termination of something, on a new service, on a new something. So you kind of have to scroll through this thing and find what you're looking for. And it's just plain text, but okay. There is you can subscribe to an email list to get email notifications. So that's great. And so next slide, we'll take a look at what do these things look like? So next slide. Okay, so we have a public information statement from the National Weather Service to subscribers, right? So there's an email subscribe list and everybody else. Soliciting comments on the proposed termination of a bunch of stuff. And this particular one, there were like 5 things on it. So I'm just highlighting one of the things, the Global Ensemble Forecast System plumes. Okay, so, and it says that they're targeted for termination due to their legacy status. Okay, so not really getting into it, but this is an old product and it's being discontinued. It has some links to the product itself, information about the code that creates that. And then there's like 5 other ones on this. And then it says, please submit comments, questions, or requests to an email address. There's also a Google form, right? So this is what a weather service public information statement looks like. And it tries to tell you what the thing is, when the change is happening, a little bit of background, and then provide a way for the public to provide comment. In this case, 2 different ways, an email and a Google form. So that's the Weather Service. And again, they've been doing this for decades. Next slide. So, so this is the webpage for the NOAA NESDIS. So NESDIS is the satellite and data part of NOAA. And we have a webpage. It has a running list of all of the product changes within our part of NOAA. And here's just a couple examples. So a decommissioning of a satellite, and then a website retirement. So at the bottom of this page, it kind of lays out what this part of NOAA is supposed to do. So we want to tell you the product of interest, give you an email address, ask you to submit your comments, and then we will respond, right? So we will confirm that we got your comment. We will have a 30-day open period for public comment, and then we will post the decisions within 30 days. Okay, so next slide is just an example. So here we have one from NCEI, Flower Garden Banks. It's a map viewer. And it has actually been taken over by a different part of NOAA and will be available there. So great. They provide that information, the retirement date, the point of contact, send comments to an email. So this is what NOAA does. We have 2 slightly different approaches, but it's pretty basic, where there's a website. If you know what the website is, you can find it. One of them provides an email listserv that you can sign up for, but the same kind of information is in these notices. So now let's hear from NASA about how they do it.
All right, I assume that's me, Jessica, if you're not coming off mute, but NASA Jessica, not NOAA Jessica. All right, so let's talk about it. We are a little less formal because, as you probably have heard several times, we are not big O operations as NOAA is and NCEI and has different set of requirements that we do. I am not a policy wonk. I'm more of a hand wavy, jump right in kind of person. So I actually am probably not as aware as I should be about the anything other than the Paperwork Reduction Act means we can't email people to survey them when I think of it. But in this context, I think I have a lot to learn. So thanks, Jessica, for keying me in on more things I need to learn. But really, we have several opportunities to engage users. I think we do have gaps in this. and I'll get on my soapbox later. But generally, when we talk about the NASA approach, the first thing you see everybody with our buttons, the earthdata.nasa.gov website is going to put front and center notifications on data alerts. We'll get into that, look at a screenshot of our tool later. We also obviously have email listservs from the DACs, from the science teams who are running individual instruments or missions, and then users, to users who are registered for getting data from specific DACs or specific types of data products. We also try to prepare for things we see coming from longer term workshops, and then really discuss them in presentations. So sort of outlined our approach. So let's go on to the next slide and get into it. So we have this really nice tool called Data Alerts under earthdata.nasa.gov/data/alerts and outages, and it's color coded, hopefully friendly for those folks who have color blindness, but really it's showing you, whether this is an active outage, a resolved outage, a data update, a data release. So anything happening related to data products as far as planning for decommissioning or transitioning from a newer version or from an older version to a newer version, or periodic outages. Also at the top of that site, it's not in this screenshot, but you'll see a timeline of known outages for products. So this is a little more ad hoc things that are happening right now. But this is really, we give it a high visibility within our website, and we try to put it out there and for public consumption as soon as we know and as soon as we have resolved it. So another way we do that, if we go on to the next slide, is really talking about it. We have publications not only letting people know that data products are going to be decommissioned, but also giving them options for potentially products that they might be moved to. So we do try to do outreach within our community for some of these products. And then next, I talked about the next slide, workshops. We did a couple of workshops on the Terra, Aqua, and Aura end of life. One was actually about how we can do new science with the drifting orbits of those satellites. And then we really did talk about what the needs and gaps of the community were as going forward. And we're still resolving some of those. The A train is a unique orbit with a unique crossing time. And as we move to new products, we have different characteristics. And it takes a lot of time to make a continuity of time series continuous product with products changing and sensors changing throughout the lifetime of that product. But we definitely have been working on this for several years, and with the planned retirement of these satellites really coming within the calendar year, we've probably got a lot more work to do in the community to amp that up, holding sessions and things like that. So, and then finally, the next slide is not mine. I thought there'd be one more, but it was but I will pass it along to my USGS counterpart, and happy to talk more about this as we open the session up.
Thank you, Katie. If we find that slide, we can always go ahead. Maybe it'll show up later.
I think it was just that I was expecting it in a certain order and it was switched up. That's my bad.
Okay, thank you very much. Speakers from NOAA and NASA, I would say just even getting this session together, we've already learned a lot from examples that we've shared with each other, and hope you can also learn with us. So I'm going to give one example of a USGS approach. I was hesitant to say the USGS approach. I do think we have a variety of approaches. We have earthquake data, water data, more specific smaller data sets, but this one is the USGS water data changes, which is something going on right now, an active campaign, and I will just walk through a little bit the multi-pronged approach that the team told me about. So this is trying to reach all of their users, and I wanted to read what they told me just about who their users are. There's a complex set of users, which include folks that do critical operations or emergency planning using the delivery services, and this includes federal partners and cooperators of all sizes. I was going to say shapes and sizes. So that is one of the reasons they have a multi-pronged approach to try to reach all of them. So the first is this system is going to undergo a lot of changes to not just where the data are, but the services that are accessing them. So the communications for this includes banners on the web pages. So if you do go to the web page, you will see a note and then some links to more information that you can read more detail. There's also a quarterly newsletter by email for people who have opted in because they use this data product and they want to know the latest. Sometimes the changes are so detailed that a full public webinar is warranted and helps. And I've been told that even if they give an introductory webinar, sometimes they need to follow up on some of the questions that came up, maybe about more specific use. And then also blogs and social media posts. There will be some screenshots later, but also here's an example of whatever social media platform that one is. I believe that's Instagram. And one thing I want to maybe be able to discuss later is there is a challenge that the team mentioned to me about invisible audiences who are not reached by even these 4 different approaches, and if there's any tips on how to reach those invisible audiences, such as API users or users of the data just by a service and they wouldn't see any of these notices. So here are some screenshots from a blog post where there's points of contact and, again, just trying to let users know this change is hard. This message says the change is hard and it feels sudden, but please reach out to us if you have a specific question. And they do hear a lot from the users. And here is another example of some of the details about how people can get more information. You go to this webinar, move your bookmarks early, and some tips that they give. And this is, of course, I chose the example from USGS I found that had the most communication. Of course, it would be difficult to get every project to do this, but maybe during the discussion, we could highlight which of these you think are useful to you as a user or you might want to implement and kind of prioritize a little bit to bring more projects or more data sources up to this level if it's necessary. Okay, so that is the end of our presentation part of this session. I want to, we're going to have to optimize the screen space here, but we do have, let me get my co-presenters back up on the screen. And I will share, so just so we know what the room is like, I'd say here in the room we have about 20 to 25 people in the room. And so hello, I took a picture so I could show the co-host, and then online we also have a good number of people. So we just see gray. Okay. Oh, Zoom. Okay, so I just want to, maybe we could help the audience figure out how we're going to do this, because we discussed 2 ways depending on the size of the audience. We have Slido, which we could use to go through each of the questions and kind of bring it up as a larger group. But sometimes it is useful to share a little bit more individually with a smaller group before sharing back with the larger group. I am seeing this will be a good challenge for us to do this both online and in person. So could my co-host maybe weigh in on what would be useful for you, seeing what the size of the online and in-person audience is right now?
So I'm thrilled to hear that there are so many folks in the room. That's fantastic. There's also, a bunch of folks online. So I agree. I wonder do we have the capability for folks in the room to just ask questions, turn on their mic and ask questions? And then we can have
Yes.
folks in the online put their questions in the Zoom chat.
Yes, we can do that, and thank you for reminding me. Maybe before we launch into those 4 specific questions, let's see any reactions that we have or other specific questions that people have. And I will keep an eye on both the chat. Maybe if you could help me online, if you see something on chat, to make sure that's elevated onto the mic, and we'll also go here in the room. And I see a hand raised back there. It would help if maybe you could introduce just your name and where you're from before you ask.
Sure, I'm Kate Wing. I'm with Intertidal Agency. We're a nonprofit that works on making ocean and climate data open and accessible. And I just wanted to start off, I've been working with some of the data rescue groups, and I just really want to thank everyone who is here today from a federal agency, because we know how much work everyone, all of you and your team have done to make data available and make these information products over the years. And we can only see from the outside and from what we hear sometimes from the inside about what is happening. And I just want to start us off by saying thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the session. Thank you for your work.
Thank you, and turn around, Joe.
So I'm Kathy Holder, and I am a state hazard mitigation officer from the state of Utah. I use data from everyone that I can in the federal government, and we are using, just for informational purposes, that might help my question. We are using a lot of the data that comes from the different entities and pulling it into all hazard maps, because we are trying to look at all risk. And then we're trying to, and we're sharing that risk in one platform for the communities to make it easier for them to grasp that data. And so if anybody else here has other ideas, let me know too. But I'm very much concerned with the loss of possible data and how that's going to affect the hazard risk that we're at least able to share with the communities to plan for their hazards. And so if there is, I guess the question is, if there is anything that we can do from our side coming from state entities or to voice that better, please let us know. I don't want to lose any of your data, and I'm very concerned.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Any questions on what you saw or things you'd like to make sure are addressed today? And yes, our speakers as well, Jessica Morgan from NOAA.
Yeah, so I wonder if we could do a little bit of a panel and then really talk about the questions. And I'll start. So when this topic came up, the first thing that I thought when I looked at the 2 parts of my agency, well, I had a bunch of thoughts. First is, there are 6 parts of my agency. Where are the other 4? Okay, so not all parts of my agency do the same thing. I also thought, well, I know that there are 6 parts of my agency. Who else would know that unless you're in my agency, right? And so then looking at the actual web pages, other than look and feel, it's just a web page, right? And I am you know, old. I'm in my 40s, so I don't really know how people who are not in their 40s get their information. But I remember things like RSS feeds and like subscribing to things that weren't email, but like where you had like a thing. And I was thinking, wow, 20 years ago, there probably was an RSS feed on all of these. And what has replaced RSS feeds? That's how old I am, right? And thinking about, okay, in NOAA, we know that a lot of users access our data from machine to machine, right? So they're accessing cloud to cloud. They are they know exactly where the data. They went through all the discovery step already to find that. Then they set up their code and it's just running. How are they going to know if a change happens, whether it's a new thing that maybe is cooler and better, whether it's just a change to the existing thing they are already kind of latched into, or a discontinuation of that thing? How are they going to know? And I'm sure folks like, I see Douglas in the room. Hi, Douglas. In the AI community have ideas about how to, ping a machine to machine to say, hey, something's happening. Maybe that's what we need to do. But I really want us to think about all of our users, from folks who actually look at a website to folks who have no idea that there are 6 parts of my agency, much less go looking for our 6 websites. So from that end of the spectrum all the way to machine users who are, I would consider to be very advanced, but then how do we double dutch into your code to alert you that something's happening?
Thank you. I think what you're getting at, Noah, Jessica, is that now you're kind of highlighting some of the challenges you have, and maybe we could have the speakers go through specifically those challenges before we then dive into those 4 questions and get input from more people. Okay, so then I'll turn it over to our NASA presenters here to see if you'd like to highlight some of the challenges.
I think highlighting the challenges is really easy. So I think one of the challenges, and Jessica Burnett, please hop in. But we have been, so if you've been a participant in ESIP for a long time, you know about 5 to 10 years ago, we talked a lot about data provenance. And in that context, it was, what code processed this? What were the flags used in the PGE? And how did it get from being a level 0 product to a level 3 product? And one of the things that we're learning is that provenance actually creates I won't say house of cards, but I will say it creates a genealogy for data products. For example, there are data products that are used probably by folks like Kathy from Utah, who asked the question earlier, that are doing firelight detection or soil moisture indication. So you can look where there is fuel for fires and where the fires might be starting. But it turns out that those fire detection algorithms or those soil moisture products that are rolled up to a high, like level 2 or level 3, they may depend on products at a lower level that we wouldn't think that they would. Like, for example, an atmospheric correction algorithm or a cloud mask portion. And sometimes when you roll those things up, if one of those products that are feeding into the provenance of those higher level data and information products goes away, we have to react, and we don't often have adequate time. So this is sort of also a greater understanding of like how we are trying to sort of see if it might not even be our data, it might be a DoD product, or it might be a NOAA product that we are leveraging, or it might be an updated road network map. There's lots of different places where we are dependent upon all these things, and if one of those goes away, often if we need adequate notice and we need to give adequate notice, there is that's a very difficult thing that we're also trying to navigate, because there are different types of users. Some people only want, a low level 1, level 2 product. And some people are really just looking for a GIS map in time. And so there are like, so they won't even interact with our email service. So these are sort of the things that we're thinking about and trying to hear from the audience on what their pain points are. And we're learning in real time that if we find out that one of those dependent products, one of those things that we have historically used as an input into our data products is going away, how much time do we need to compensate? Are there funds to compensate? So we're trying to figure this out as we go along as well. So I think I appreciate everyone sort of thanking us for the work we do, but there's things that we are going to need a little grace as we are going forward to figure out what the process is. And I think we've already started to see some of this, and I really like the data usage or the data alerts tool that we've had out on our website. But we need to coordinate, I think, better amongst the agencies and even the agencies that aren't necessarily represented at the ESIP meeting to think about that. So, all right, that's my soapbox I wanted to get onto and sort of, get the brain trust of the Earth Science Information Partners thinking about like, how do we advocate for longer notice, ensure that we have access to surrogate products that can sort of slot in, create more modular workflows. And it kind of gets to what we talk about all the time at ESIP, which is how do you make reusable, findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable data products. And we're not just talking about metadata, it's really the data products themselves. So, but breathe.
Katie, thanks. I think all of us are kind of, you brought up a very good point. And NASA, Jessica, want to add on anything here? No, I saw you off mute. Okay.
Switching microphones. It's definitely not me. I just wanted to add one small point there about a little bit about provenance and whether the user is going to know what changes. In addition to us potentially discontinuing products, there's also the fact that if an upstream product or data source changes in another data product or a downstream model, but it doesn't affect the availability of that model output or that data source, the user will not potentially know unless they're keeping up to date with the scientific changes in that source data or model. And so I think in addition to all of the data systems technical challenges that are associated with discontinuations and notifications, there's also that cultural challenge of making those data providers and model producers aware of the downstream impacts and upstream impacts that might affect them or that they might affect on their users.
Thank you. And again, you are just bringing more content to the list of things that are affected by these changes, that at least now there's more awareness, and maybe we can just let our networks and communities know, like, are you using something that if there's a change, you might not notice that in the model output unless, sorry, my head is also spinning, but I'm trying to take notes here, and if we don't solve it today, we will have a nice list of considerations of what this affects. Just to wrap up from the speakers, 'cause I really want the participants to get a chance to share a bit more that will help us. But I'll just reiterate this idea of the invisible users. We would like to do a better job reaching them, but we're not sure. If we're not sure who these users are, how do we reach you? And maybe if there's any of you here in the audience that you consider, oh yes, some of the way that I use the data, like, they wouldn't know. If you could let us know a bit about, like, how might we reach you? I think I heard one of the water data team members told us, sometimes I've resorted to just web searching like these keywords that would show that there's a project that uses our data, and then they kind of reach out to them that way. So that's not the best way to be doing outreach about changes. Okay, I think we should jump into the Slido again, maybe, because that is a good way to get some engagement, and we can see the results here on the screen. I tend to lose the faces, but I think I can get that. Okay, so if we go back to the Slido and I press play on the first question, and you're gonna see me twice. So I should turn this off. And then I should go here, and we're going to focus on, okay. So none of these are going to be a one-size-fits-all answer, I believe, but maybe you could talk about for your case, for your specific case, how much advance notice is adequate. And I am going to try to get some faces back up on the screen. I pressed this full screen option. I don't know why I did that. Exit full screen. Yes. Okay. Whew. All right, so I believe we have a working situation for in the room. So I just want to check that online you have a good view of the responses coming in. Okay.
Yeah,
so,
and I put the first question in the chat, and folks can respond to that in the chat if they'd like to.
okay. This is Zoom. Okay, so I'm gonna read out some of the things that we're seeing here, but as much time as possible. 6 months, at least 30 days, preferably 30 business days. Okay, thanks for putting the timing. Maybe if you could say a little bit about your use as well, that would help us understand why we have a range of answers. And I will be reading, but please, co-hosts online, feel free to unmute if there's something you wanted to note or talk more about.
Yeah, Leslie, I'm really curious about this comment about international users and how
okay.
1 to 2 years might be needed. I'm very curious what's driving that estimate of over a year of lead time needed.
Okay, I see a hand, and where's the mic? Thank you, Joe. Shelley Stahl is in the audience.
Hello, it's Shelley Stahl from AGU. So conversations around, well, if I lose my primary source of data, there's a significant effort that was necessary to come up with other data products that could meet the need. So there's folks out there internationally who are going to then, and I think of internationally because I'm getting a lot of phone calls from the international folks right now, by the by, and they're naming data sets. There's a NIST data set that one group is desperate in Germany to make sure is okay, and if they don't have it, it's a no kidding issue to figure out how for their product to be working using different data sets. So you have to almost go through a whole new development process to find for a model that will work if the primary data set's unavailable. So that's where the 1 to 2 years is a guess on my part for those sorts of situations. But if it's a full loss of a primary data set where one of you, NASA, NOAA, USGS, was the custodian, steward, it's a huge impact.
Thanks, Shelley, for elaborating.
Okay, thank you for the range of answers we're getting here as well. This is great. I was not sure what types of responses we would get, but this is more than a 90-minute discussion. We will be able to take this and go back and continue discussing. So anything else anyone would like to highlight?
So for me, looking at this, so when I first learned that my agency's public notice period was 30 days, I thought, okay, 30 days is kind of standard for like Federal Register notices. And usually there's a, it's posted and there's a bunch of stuff. And that's kind of standard, but that's also very old school, right? And that kind of assumes that people are reading the Federal Register notice, which I don't know if anybody's doing this. So I really appreciate the detail in some of these responses here, because I need to know this. I need to know about downstream effects that we just don't have a good way of gauging that. So this is very, very helpful for me, and I really appreciate your comments.
Okay, and then I'll say, is there anyone in the online audience that would like to make a comment or speak? I want to make sure we give you that chance. And Joe, if you could just keep an eye and see if anyone raises their hand or puts a question in the chat. Okay, well, thank you. We hope that both online and in person can contribute this way. Also, in person, there may be people who do not want to use Slido. That is fine. Does anyone want to raise their hand and bring up something to the room? And it could be highlighting something that you typed in. Raise your hand high. So we have two. Maybe let's go to the new speaker and then we'll go back to Shelley.
I am Katie Hoberling. I'm from Open Environmental Data Project. I'm curious if anything longer than 30 days, like how reasonable that is for some of the data products that are being discontinued. Just seeing the range of answers that are requesting, 6 months, multiple years. So yeah, I'm just wondering like how those longer timelines land with you all. Like, are those actually feasible? Are there ways that we can advocate for longer term notice? And I guess kind of tacking onto that, I put this in the Q&A, but I'm wondering if there are ever cases of public comments being used to justify not discontinuing a data set that was planned to be, and if that's a good strategy for that kind of thing. Thank you.
Katie Baines.
Yeah, so I have some thoughts. I can only speak for NASA because it's the only agency I've worked for in this capacity. But I think when I think about notice, it really comes down to how, this is going to sound really wonky, how a data product is funded. So NASA, we launch missions. We have a couple dozen. We can see they are usually funded for 3 years, and then we do something called the senior review, right? So NISAR, which will, my lips to God's ears, launch in a week and a half. If that mission is a 3-year mission that we plan for, but at the end of 3 years, we decide, you know what? We poll the scientific community. We do this thing called the senior review. We actually did a big round senior review back in 2023, and I'll post the link here to that report. We actually survey the community and we say, hey, is this useful to you? Should we keep funding it? So there is this feedback within NASA for the big mission data products. It's like, these are the dozens of data products that are provided by Terra or Aqua or Aura at these various levels. And we make a commitment to our community that these are standard data products. And we can elaborate a little bit more on what that means. But then sometimes there are these smaller data products that are basically taking coincident data or making new algorithms to exploit what data the big standard data product mission data are doing. And we start creating those. And those are largely run by grants. Measures, actually, I'll post a link in the chat in a second. Measures was one of those grant programs. And we give money to a university or we give money to an institute of some sort, and they start churning out those data products. And they go into our archives, but we aren't really tracking them at the granularity that we track our big mission data products. So if the community becomes dependent on one of these sort of secondary products, we have a little bit of a separate problem where we might not have the same communication infrastructure because we just don't have that relationship that we do with the big missions at NASA. I don't know. That's my thought. Jessica, do you have anything else? So if you're part of an institute that's doing one of these secondary data products, or you know, a more of a concerted, like we take this and then we correct it with this and then we do this and this and this and now we have, boom, a new product. That, if it's not funded under a mission, we don't have the same sort of products. So I don't know.
Yeah, I totally agree. If it's not in our archive, it's a lot harder to track effectively.
Okay, and Sarah Lubkin has put in the chat, adequate depends is kind of like another way to say it. Adequate depends on whether it is long-term, widely used satellite product or a small non-mission or maybe historical, rarely used data set. And I would echo that at USGS, the example I showed, there's a whole team dealing with communications for this water data product, but we have many other products that are public data releases, but you may get a much shorter notice if something happens to them. And I would have to say, in the past, we don't have too much experience with those smaller ones going away, because we've always, if it's a data release, then a DOI goes to them. So this is a very timely conversation for us. Okay, I'm going to open the next question while Shelley, is this, just open this, okay. Co-hosts, is there one you want to prioritize? This is like choose your own adventure. We have, where should the notice, I feel like what information is a very big topic that maybe we could say, maybe where? Could we maybe go to the where next? And that one might be a little bit, yeah, okay, so thank you for that. And remember, we showed you a few examples of where notice is currently provided, but do you have any creative ideas on other ways to reach users? So again, if you're one of those invisible users, you're like, I never go to the website, would you sign up for a user list, or how could notice be provided to you?
And if the answer is Instagram, that's fine. I mean, no, so seriously, like, how do people find out about stuff? And how would you like to find about stuff? That is very important for us. Reddit.
Okay, well, that is a place. I've not gone to that URL. Aggregates notices. Back of my okay. LinkedIn, okay, that we've seen a lot of growth in that platform, I believe, in the last year or so. So that's a good thing to see that somebody has suggested. AGU and other science orgs, everywhere the data is curated. Okay, everywhere the data or curated data is downloaded. So can we get information about where it's downloaded? Listservs, banners on websites. The new question? Yes, the new question. Do you want to? Decision, okay, Shelley's looking down. Let's go to Kate maybe, and then Shelley.
So maybe related, and to you, Leslie, again, Kate Wing with Intertidal Agency, you mentioned that for this water program, there are banners on the web pages, there are quarterly newsletters, there are public webinars, you're doing blogs, and you're doing social media posts on Instagram. So presumably someone in that program did some of this, like looked around and was like, this seems to be where our people are getting the information from. So if you can provide any background on like how they did that, that would be helpful. And then the second part of my question, which is maybe more for some of the groups in the room, is that there are restrictions through the Paperwork Reduction Act on the types of information and surveys that can be sent out by federal agencies to collect information on users. There are workarounds for those, and the US Digital Service in particular has been very good at figuring out how to get around those. But one of the big workarounds is if you have a partner freestanding nonprofit who is not receiving any type of federal data or federal money to do the survey, e.g. AGU, the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation, Friends of Park X. They can survey the heck out of anybody they want to, and the PRI has no restrictions on them. So I'm also curious if anybody in this meeting anywhere has successfully had an outside partner with no inappropriate coordination with the federal agency at all do some type of user research that then informed some type of notification or public engagement process. So one, specifically, like how did the USGS team figure out that these were the right modes of communication? And then two, if anybody has an example of like, this outside group helped us figure out what were the right channels and this is what worked.
Thanks for giving us more things to think about, Kate. Okay, so let me see if I can address your first question. I am going to read a few quotes because they're fun for me. Okay. So the team wrote back to me. I said, hey, water data team, I'm going to use your blog post as like an example in this ESIP session coming up. And one response, thanks for letting us know this meeting topic. This is a challenging area. They're very interested in what we talk about this. So the decommission of NWIS Web has been a very challenging communications experience. We've been slowly putting out changes, and at this point, we have a pretty refined, multi-pronged approach to public communications. And I think this team in particular has been doing communications for a while. So they are an example of a team that has put a lot of thought into this. And I know there's a lot of projects where you're just trying to learn from others. And I think that they have a long-standing product and sign-ups for their listservs, their webinars. So I think the answer here is that you have to have people dedicated to figuring out the audience and where to find them, and it takes time. So I can go back and see if I can get a more detailed response for you and maybe some of the methods they use to gather where their users are. But I think I and others are just impressed with the variety of ways that they use, but it's because of they've specifically put effort into that. Okay, so I've missed a lot of these answers that are coming through, and thanks, I see that people are still typing. So the second one that you brought up, Kate, can I remember and reiterate the second question about coordinating with nonprofits that may have done some surveys and then led to changes? Is that for our panel here to say if they've heard of this approach? Or is there anyone in the room? I made a note. Go ahead.
Yeah, so, okay, so engaging our partners, right? So in my agency, some of our big programs, like our satellite programs, have a whole engagement piece built into the program, right? Where we regularly engage with universities, we have a whole engagement branch or division. And for our major products, right? So like JPSS, GOES-R, we have that. But my agency has lots of much smaller data, right? So our big programs have that built in where we have engaged a partner, we've engaged our university partners, our cooperative institutes, all of those things. And we've done that throughout the lead up to a new launch, as well as, all throughout the life cycle. We don't have that everywhere, right? But we as an agency, we do interact with all kinds of nonprofits, including ESIP, right? So a thought that I had was, hey, ESIP Slack, could there be a dedicated channel on ESIP Slack for this? And to operationalize that, right, to get my agency to post something to that every time we make a change across my agency, that could take some coordination. But I wonder if so ESIP is a nonprofit sitting right there. And then finding, and I'm really interested to look through the what you posted about these other venues. So the last thing I'll say, so thank you, non-federal partner, for pointing out part of what the Paperwork Reduction Act does is it doesn't prevent us from surveying, but it creates a whole process and procedure for surveying. And federal surveys initiated by the federal government have to be directed. You basically have to know who you're surveying, right? So we can do that if we know who we need to ask questions. What if we don't know who we're surveying, right? So that becomes very, very difficult. And hence this discussion. Thank you.
Okay, yes, we thank you, participants in the discussion. Next point from Shelley Stahl.
So I'm on my third question. I've jettisoned the other two. So for this particular angle, some of you, AGU reached out to ESIP to get volunteers now a few months ago to help a criteria for impactful data sets, where we wanted to not look at citations, not look at downloads for what does a data set mean to our researchers with no boundaries, so that we could celebrate those data sets. And so we soft launched the survey last week, and I got feedback right away. So I actually just made an update this morning on it. So I haven't yet asked Susan to put it into the newsletter here, but she's on the list. And so it's time to actually hard launch it. And it might be helpful for you to look at the responses as you're considering the community connections, especially for those smaller data sets, that one researcher who makes a difference in the world, who uses the data set, is enough for me. But you all are the ones that are having to manage it and pay for its ongoing support. So it's really tough to figure out what impactful means. So we're really hoping to learn a lot from this. There'll be a published commentary and maybe some other stuff, but happy to share that openly as they're coming in. And we're looking for stories. We're looking for user stories. So.
Thanks, Shelley. So can you just, so in summary, is that something that the panelists or anybody should get in contact with you if we want to follow up? Okay, she said anybody.
Leslie, I was just gonna, this is Susan Shingledecker for those online. I was just gonna respond to a couple things there. I love that ESIP comes up as a name and a place where people would want that information to come. I think that's something that absolutely could be explored, and it was great to work with AGU on the project that Shelley was mentioning. As someone who came from and is returning to a more applied user community, what I'm gonna say is that, yes, I'm flattered you would want ESIP to be that place, but you're gonna miss so many users who just one day the light is just gonna go out, and then they're gonna be in a dark room and the data's gone and they didn't know it was coming. So I appreciate this, but we are a club, and there's a lot of people who have not yet found the club. And I think that we have to have more broad ways to reach them. And I do think where people are accessing those data sets, right? If there is some place where they are going to get that data set, and that data set is gonna have a critical change, they aren't gonna know to go to the Federal Register. They aren't gonna know to go to this change board. I've been to NOAA's change board, and I've tried to understand, okay, is it going away? Is the old data going away? Are we just losing new data? It's very hard to understand what the changes mean for the average person. And so I would just encourage trying to put it where, if we have the metrics and we know where people are accessing the data, finding those places and making the notifications there. And I know that's really hard.
Thank you, Susan, for reminding us ESIP is one place that we can go, but there's other places are needed. But I think a lot of us here do believe that ESIP will help us to even improve what the message is and where else to post it. Okay, I see. First, we'll go to Jessica Burnett and then in the room.
Yeah, echoing Leslie, thanks Susan for that great comment. I think that this also kind of underpins a need for, again, a cultural shift in how, for example, at NASA, our entire Earth Science division and the folks that we fund or the folks that support us are communicating and understanding where their data and information comes from not only the data collection to what Susan just highlighted, those applications, or for example, tools that someone is just using a point and click service and making decisions for their power grid based on that data availability. And so from what I understand, ESIP has served as a conduit for cultural change in earth science and earth science data systems. And so maybe that's something that we can think about as the tri-agency mindset here in how we leverage the ESIP community to help us achieve those cultural shifts around data provenance and awareness.
Thanks. Okay. Hello to Mark Parsons, and also we have another question in the room. Oh, Katie? Sorry. Katie, are you following up on Jessica's comment?
Kind of. I'm going to be a little bit more blunt. I think that there are anybody who has logs of who is downloading our data and leveraging it knows that there are some very big players who have secondary markets, who also probably should have some sort of responsibility in communicating to their end users when data products are going away. So I'm thinking, any major GIS platform, or anyone who is actively promoting an engine for doing, API sorts of work, or that, like, they know, and I think they should have the opportunity to reach out to their users as well. And if we want, I don't know if anybody from either of those two organizations are there, but give us a call and we can talk through this. And you all have a much wider audience, bigger reach, more expansive comms teams, and that might help us too. So just a thought.
Thanks. That is noted. Let's make sure we get to the question in the room. While we're asking that question, I'll open the next question on the poll because I know we're going to approach the end of this session. So, sorry, question asker. Conveners, would you rather that I put the what information should be shared, or the kind of, there's one like, is email okay? Are there alternatives? Thinking the what will lead to a richer responses. Okay, I'm gonna click that one on, and please go ahead in the room if you could say who you are and ask your question.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So my name is Anthony Boyd. I'm at Development Seed. And so a little context for this question, Development Seed, we kind of sit on the side of this whole process. So it's really interesting to listen in. In my background and my career actually is much more in software as opposed to science. So take this question with a grain of salt, but also maybe an outsider's perspective. So I hear a lot of great conversation. We saw a lot of different communication techniques. I hear a lot of talk about surveys and reaching out to users. And again, from a software perspective, I think that's great. I just wonder at a certain point, does it become too much? And so that's where my question is there an opportunity to find a balance between reaching out to users in many different ways, through many different channels, reaching out with surveys, because survey fatigue is very real. And then on the flip side of that is another approach, simplifying and making it extremely clear for these data users where to come for updates. And there might only be two options. And obviously, I think the data providers in the room have a very unique challenge that there is so much data and we don't know who's dependent on what. And so the cost of getting it wrong is very high. And so it would need to be a balance. But I just hear a lot of conversation about adding more channels and maybe less conversation on cleaning it up and making it really clear.
Okay, so simplifying. Do we have, thank you for your comment and question. I'll see if anyone wants, from the panel wants to respond.
I mean, an RSS is a great way. Really simple syndication, it's a thing. I was exhausted just listening to us list off all the different things we could do. And, we could just pub sub. You don't sub when we pub, then you missed out. I also, in a only half joking sort of way, maybe 3/4 joking, is really what happens if we just turn it off for a day and see what breaks? Like that, how much would we learn? This is not for NOAA. We don't want our tornado alert systems going off, but is that an option for non-operational data? I don't know, it's like we would really learn a lot. And that is a joke, by the way. This is not me saying we're going to do this, but I think that we learn a lot from the pathways of how information flows, communication flows, and what is impacted through that sort of thing. But
Thank you. Sorry, I'm making faces because I'm pressing the wrong things on Slido, and hopefully I'm not changing it when someone's typing, but yes, okay, we have a response in the room from Kate Wing.
Just to raise yet another forum where people are taking feedback. If anyone has been involved in the Future of Earth Observations process that the National Academies is running right now, which is supposed to be like, let's plan for the future of Earth observations in the US / globally. So there've been a few meetings already. Some of us have been to them. There's going to be an unconference session here on Thursday where that input will be fed into the NASM discussions. And one of the things that came up in the expert session that Steve Dix and I were in was around model sensitivities to specific data inputs and how many data providers, researchers, other folks had done that work of like, what if we drop off the following things into our models or into our data products or into this thing that we're selling as a commercial data product service provider? How many of these data streams can we afford to lose before it totally breaks? So a slightly different version of turn it all off, but who is doing those sensitivity analyses? I would say if you are or know somebody who is doing those sensitivity analyses for any kind of data product you work on, that's really valuable input for that NASM process, as well as maybe some of the other conversations we're having here to help kind of prioritize and sort through, especially for some of the groups like Katie's comment, the outside data rescue groups, like understanding what the impacts are of losing data sources by using a model sensitivity analysis might be another way to get at this, turn it all off and see what breaks approach without actually breaking things, and making some of those sensitivity analyses more public, because it certainly seemed like NASM was looking for them and the group in that room didn't have as many of them as they wanted.
Thank you.
I'm actually really interested in that. I don't know who said that, but I think that would be definitely a good avenue.
This is Douglas Rao, and I just want to quickly respond because to Kate and the NOAA's chief economist office, they've been doing some of those assessment of the values of different Earth observations to different use cases. And so I believe they're trying to publish one of their report sometime soon. So that would be something useful for understanding some of the Earth observation. And also there are a lot of discussion within the AI community about how those data-driven approach can actually help to evaluate the contribution of the Earth observations in the prediction for specific use cases, like for extreme events and other things. That is one thing people are actively pursuing as well and also for the future observing system design application as well. And one response to the invisible users who maybe use API or those more programmatic access is that I think in a way we can emulate this from the software community, where when they have dependency changes or there's upgrade of the versions, they will say, after this version at certain dates,
those functions will no longer be available, right? So thinking about how those can be implemented in the APIs or other things that when problematic users are using those, they will get a notice. Right now you can still use it, but after certain versions, then you will no longer be able to access those data or you need to change certain things for that.
Can you clarify, how does that notice get to them?
So if you're running code in Python, and then when there's a function that will be no longer available, they just say after certain versions, this will not be available. So there will be a message when you're running that code, right? They're just saying after version 1.3.1, that function will no longer be available. You should choose a different function to do that.
Thank you for giving us another thing to pay attention to and more resources. Okay. We have a question in the room, and I just want to give a time check. We're going to be wrapping this up in about 5 to 7 minutes, so we'll take one more question in the room, and then maybe I will move to the takeaways poll and let the speakers maybe give a closing statement after this question. So please, Ethan Davis.
Hi, this is Ethan Davis at Unidata. I was just going to comment on the operational versus non-operational aspects of NOAA and NASA. I think users don't necessarily understand the distinction, and they think if the data is available that it's, that they can trust it. We've certainly had with some of our just data servers, some fairly high-level groups using it and being shocked when it goes away because it's not operational. So I just think, shutting things off and breaking things is clearly a way to figure things out, but not always good, and not everyone's going to understand the operational nature of things or the lack of operational nature. But it can't rely on this for, operational things. Anyway.
Okay, so maybe that's a thought to think about the messaging, like if we have products that we might suspect people are using in a way, but we know it's not really defined as operational, then data providers should think about that's something they can think about and help their users. Okay, any other comments to the comment? Okay, if not, I think I will go through, see, I managed to get your faces on the screen over here with the Slido, so I'm going to go in the order that I see you. If you want to give a minute or two of something you learned today or as a takeaway, because that's what we're asking everyone here as well. That really helps us to make sense of this 90-minute session. I'm so glad that it was convened. Thank you, NOAA Jessica and NASA Jessica, for rallying the speakers and questions. Okay, so I'm going to go down this list, and Katie Baines, you are the first window here.
I just want to thank you, Leslie, for being our man on the ground here, coordinating and running and participating, and my fellow panelists. I also just want to say I wish I could be there, and I'd love to be having these conversations in person. We are thinking about this quite a bit, and I think we have a lot more chances to practice going forward. So we'll keep getting better. That's one of the good things about being in the data systems or the ESIF community, is that we have a place to talk and have these discussions. And coordinate. I've learned, I really like Douglas' suggestion about, a deprecation notice on the API. That's always helped me when I was programming. But yeah, simplifying the message, getting other people engaged. I think that helps me think that it's not my responsibility or the people on my team's only responsibility is to inform every single person in the universe. There is work to be done by the community, and they can share that burden with us. So it made me feel less alone, I guess, or less the burden on us alone. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Katie. And next I see NOAA Jessica.
Yeah, so I am, I don't know why my thing is still clapping. Okay. So I am so glad that we're having this conversation. And I have so many things to think about. I'm really glad that, again, like Katie said, not to be alone. So one of the things that happens to us in all of our stovepipes anywhere is that we're like down in the weeds of what we do, and lifting our heads up to look around and engage is literally how innovation happens sometimes, right? Because we can't all be banging our head against the same wall without breaking through at some point. So I really like the mix here too of the technical solutions kind of offered. Like here's some technical things we can do, as well as the things to think about. And what I want to challenge my counterparts is for us to follow up with each other and really take away something. I'm thinking of some way for us to take this into a thought piece for our agencies. And I really appreciate you joining me on this journey.
Thank you, Jessica Morgan. And next, Jessica Burnett.
It's NASA Jessica today. No, I echo both Jessica and Katie's comments, and thank you all for joining us. Unsurprisingly, the ESIP Brain Trust has helped us think through not only more technical aspects of this topic, but also higher level aspects. And for that, I thank you. And I also continue to pose that challenge of help us create that cultural shift in how we think about communicate and advanced notifications and communication around data products, data dependencies, and et cetera. And so again, I think that we're going to share, Leslie's going to share our contact information. Please do feel free to reach out to me if you have any NASA specific questions or ideas. We are all ears.
Yes, thank you. Everything, when you say like, Leslie is going to do this, I freeze. I'm like, what am I going to do? I'll find, okay, but yes, you can find us. And if you didn't yet go to the Google Notes document, that's a good place to leave your name so we'll know how to maybe reach out to the group if there's any updates. And I will just take a minute to also say thank you to everyone in the session, the speakers, in person and online. I'm so glad that this topic was suggested, and we have begun a discussion here in ESIP, and we've collected a whole bunch of new things to think about, but we can prioritize and make progress. And as Denise said this morning, ESIP is where things get done. I got a bunch of stuff on my to-do list after this discussion here today. Okay, and thank you for those of you who have shared your takeaways in the Slido. And I see a hand motion from Katie.
Yeah, just one thing. I think that a lot of people in the audience there may be looking for ways that they can help or thinking about these things. And so I'll have a statement, like federal employees like me and Jessica and like Leslie cannot advocate for any position, right? But I just want to know that if this is something that you are concerned about, about these things happening, you're always welcome to sort of engage with your representatives in Congress or participate in public comment opportunities. And use your voice if that helps you. The input's important and can be influential. So again, you have to do what you think is right, but you're always welcome to do that.
Thanks all.